Dumelang, welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Clement Manyatela. Great to have you with us here on SABC News. On the show tonight, why did President Cyril Ramaphosa fire his Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry? And will the President respond to the ultimatum given by DA leader John Steenhuisen to fire his compromised ministers as well, or face consequences? Or is this another empty threat by the DA? We speak to the man who's been fired, the former Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition, Andrew Whitfield. Also on the show, what's going on at the Road Accident Fund? Why has the board mishandled the suspension of the CEO, Collins Letsoalo? And does Letsoalo have a case to answer? He speaks to us tonight. But first, my comment. It's a question all of us are asking ourselves this evening. Why did President Cyril Ramaphosa fire the Trade and Industry Minister, Andrew Whitfield? That really is the question, because there hasn't been enough transparency around what informed this decision. I mean, listen to how the minister in the presidency, Kumbuzo Nchaveni, explained Whitfield's axing.
In terms of the Constitution of the Republic, the President exercises power in two forms. There's the power that he exercises collectively with his cabinet, and there's a power that he exercises alone as the President. The decision to appoint, and I don't know whether it's a correct word, to disappoint, or to remove or to reshuffle ministers and deputy ministers, that's the sole prerogative of the President. He exercised that without consulting anyone, but that is his sole decision. So I cannot answer the question on the reshuffle.
So basically what the nation is being told is that the President has exercised his prerogative and removed the Deputy Minister, and that he has thanked him for the time that he served in the role. But why was the decision taken? I mean, this is different from a reshuffle, right? You are firing someone. Does the President not think that he owes perhaps the public some explanation, or at the very least, the person that he fires? Because the minister doesn't seem to know either what lies behind this decision by the President. The DA leader, John Steenhuisen, says this axing may have something to do with a trip that Whitfield took to the US as part of the DA delegation.
The apparent reason for this sudden and ill-considered decision is that Whitfield did not obtain permission to travel abroad earlier this year. But the facts in this matter contradict this flimsy reasoning. In fact, on the 12th of February, Deputy Minister Whitfield had written to the President requesting permission to travel. 10 days later, he had not received a reply or any response whatsoever about the trip. Whitfield subsequently wrote to the President to apologize if he had caused offense. Again, he received no response. Then yesterday, months after the incident, and without a further word on it, the President unilaterally removed a DA Deputy Minister without even giving his largest coalition partner an opportunity to discuss it with the member or his party.
Order, honourable members.
Now, according to the President's spokesperson, this move is not part of a broader reshuffle. And there can therefore be no other conclusion to be drawn that this is a calculated assault on the second largest party in the governing coalition.
Is this really about the trip to Washington, D.C.? I mean, John Steenhuisen argued today that there are double standards here. And I don't think he's wrong. How many ministers or deputies have done worse and they were never touched? In fact, they were moved to other portfolios at best. What happened when Thembisi Melani, who was the Justice Minister, when she faced allegation of having received monies that flowed from VBS? She received a loan from a businessman who allegedly received kickbacks and benefited from the VBS looting. That's the man who's actually currently standing trial on corruption charges linked to the looting of VBS. Did the president fire her? No. He asked for a report and an explanation and then moved her to the Department of Human Settlement. You would have thought that action was going to be taken against the Minister of Higher Education, Nobuhle Nkabani, over her embarrassing mismanagement of the CETA board's appointment. I mean, her belligerent attitude towards Parliament. She sent apologies after apologies over her behavior, and she hasn't been touched. The president asked for an explanation. I can go on and mention other examples where president has people in his very cabinet. I mean, John Steenhuisen mentioned David Mahlobo. You must go and read what the report that Sydney Mufamadi compiled around the role of David Mahlobo when he was at the State Security Agency. Go check out what the State Capture Inquiry said about the role of David Mahlobo when he was at the State Security Agency. Has he ever been touched? Well, the DA leader has now issued an ultimatum to the president.
If this situation is not corrected, it will go down as the greatest political mistake in modern South African history. And so, seeing the president is now cleaning house, I would like to suggest that he sweeps in front of his own doorstep before he sweeps in front of the DA's doorstep. And so, we're calling on the president to fire those ministers and deputy ministers involved in the Zondo Commission report, involved in serious charges of corruption, and those who have been involved in recent weeks of misleading this parliament. Because if the president is willing to remove a DA deputy minister for doing his job, but isn't prepared to move other ministers and deputy ministers for not doing theirs, that is hypocrisy of the highest form, and it cannot be brooked. Now, the ball is now then in the president's court, and he must show us now that he's a man of his word.
So the ultimatum is that the president has 48 hours now to fire those compromised ministers or face consequences. But how serious is the DA about this ultimatum? What are they going to do? Walk away from the GNU? I've lost count of the DA's threats. But let's wait and see, because I don't think the president will act on that ultimatum. So what do you think of the president's action? That's the question we're asking you tonight. Do you think it's justified? Do you think there are double standards here with how the president has dealt with his ministers and deputies? And of course, nobody's questioning the president's prerogative here. Of course, it's his prerogative to decide who he hires in his cabinet or as a deputy minister and who he fires. But we have to ask some serious questions, because I suspect the reason the president is not coming out with transparency and clarity around the reason for firing the deputy minister is because we are going to raise questions about double standards. If you're firing him because he went to the US, because you didn't give express approval, we're going to raise other instances where some of the ministers have behaved in an unethical manner. And in fact, they've been praised and moved to other portfolios. So please share your thoughts with us about this development. You can send us a WhatsApp voice note on 078-459-1897. Remember to tell us your name and surname and where you're sending that voice note from. Please keep it at 30 seconds. You can also send us an X on @FaceTheNation SABC. After the break, we speak to the man that the president has fired, Andrew Whitfield. Stay with us. Welcome back. So let's stay with that story. The Democratic Alliance calling on President Cyril Ramaphosa to fire other ministers and deputy ministers implicated in corruption within the next 48 hours. It follows the president's decision to fire the Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition for traveling overseas without permission. Well, at least that's what the DA believes. The former Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Andrew Whitfield, joins us now. Andrew, thank you so much for making time for us. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks very much for having me, Clement.
And I must indicate that we reached out to the presidency for their response on this matter, and we were told that they are traveling. We reached out to the ANC as well. They've been unable to join us. Let's start maybe with the reason here, Andrew, that the president gave for removing you. What did he say?
He provided no reason other than to say that in terms of Section 93(1) of the Constitution, it's his prerogative to remove me from the position. And then one line to say that he thanked me for my service. And at no stage leading up to this letter that I received yesterday or up until this evening have I received any formal explanation as to what the reason may be.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the assumption so far is that he fired you because you went on this trip to the United States as part of the DA delegation without his permission. You requested permission to travel to overseas, as I understand it, as per the ministerial handbook. What did he say when you sent that request to go to the US?
He didn't reply to the request. The ministerial handbook or the executive handbook requires of us, it says that members of the executive should request permission to travel abroad. I did that. It wasn't an official government trip. It was a trip that I was requested to go on by my party, who I also account to, obviously. And after 9 days of following up consistently, the email was acknowledged. The receipt was acknowledged, but we never received a confirmation or a negative or an affirmative response to the letter. And I took the decision to abide by the request of my party to travel abroad under the circumstances where no response was received.
How soon did you send that request before the travel date? Because my understanding is that it has to be as early as possible to allow time for processing. What does the manual actually say about the timing?
The book actually says, in terms of official visits, which this was not, a minimum of 2 weeks is recommended. This was 10 days before I actually boarded the flight, so more or less 2 weeks. I mean, you know, this was, in fact, in previous requests which were confirmed, where permission was given previously, those responses came through within a week or so. And so there's no reason why there shouldn't have been a response, in my view. But obviously, for whatever reason, and up until now, 4 months later, there still hasn't been a response to that specific request. So it's not clear why. Yeah. But there's been a lot of correspondence between my office and his since then.
Okay. Are you allowed to travel, though, without express permission, without a written consent? Because at the end of the day, you didn't get the approval.
Well, I think that under the circumstances of the GNU, I think that it would be reasonable for the president to presume that there are new members of the executive, that perhaps there was a different way to handle this. But to answer your question more specifically, I felt very strongly that 10 days was more than reasonable, a period of time to receive a response. And the fact that there was no response, I simply took silence as consent. And perhaps that was an error in judgment on my part. But at the same time, I don't think that the sanction, which appears quite dramatic against the backdrop that you've painted of other members of the executive and the history, for me to be, I think, quite possibly, Clement, the only member of the executive that President Ramaphosa has ever removed from the executive, I'm not sure, it is quite a historic decision to make on this basis. I think there were other ways to deal with this, even considering that I actually sent a letter of apology recognizing the position that I'd put the president in, and never received a response to that either.
Yes, and that was now going to be my also point. And I'm glad that you recognize that maybe in hindsight, it could have been managed differently. I mean, treating silence as concerned. What I often hear from the ministers is that when the president doesn't respond, at best, you consider it as no, just to protect yourself. So when you apologize for traveling to the US without that express approval, when you apologized, what did he say about it?
No, there was no response to the apology. In fact, I'd sent previous letters because I'd had subsequent requests to travel declined, and now we know why, or we think we know why. And one of those was a personal request to spend a week at Harvard University to study inclusive economic growth, which is literally the apex priority of the GNU. That was declined. I requested explanations and I never received them. So from my end, I think I've taken reasonable steps to try to determine what the cause may be, how it could be rectified. I've even acknowledged the situation that I placed the president in, and that there was an error of judgment. But, to take 4 months to make a decision, and then for that decision to be so disproportionate and inconsistent, in my opinion, I think that is an unnecessary provocation, considering the importance of the GNU and where we want to go as a country.
And when you came back, you're saying that there was no communication whatsoever from his office, no reprimand, just nothing?
No, not a slap on the wrist, not a request for a public apology or any of those sort of, I suppose, what you could call intermediary steps to discipline me in any shape or form. I think there were a lot of options available before pulling the trigger on what is a pretty final decision. Certainly has his signature on the letter, which makes it pretty final. But I think that, maybe there's more to this, Clement. I don't know. I'm not an easy person to work with. I certainly did not join the GNU for the position and the title. I joined it not to go along to get along, but to make a difference and to make an impact. And I've been probing and I've been challenging a number of different issues respectfully and in good faith, behind closed doors, not leaking to the media. And I've done it to the best of my ability respectfully, and in many instances in writing, which I now discover the ANC doesn't like anything in writing unless it's a termination letter.
Yeah, this is so confusing, because at best, the president could give you a warning or ask for a report or an explanation from you like he has with other cabinet ministers, which then begs the question, what else could be at play here? Have you ruffled feathers in the department? John Steenhuisen suggested earlier that this may have something to do with questions you have asked about the controversial lotteries contract and also the Transformation Fund.
Well, the Transformation Fund, I did write to the minister with my reservations on that. And I was looking forward to seeing what some of the public comments would be so we could reconcile those in the development of a consensus position on this issue. On the lotteries matter, I've been sidelined from that particular issue and have not had line of sight of anything surrounding that for the past 6 months. It's not within my delegations, but, it is a very important element of the work of the DTIC. But, that's the minister's discretion to decide who works on what particular project. And I've tried to be diligent in what's been assigned to me. I have asked other questions around legal sector codes, the Transformation Fund, the appointments to boards where I felt that there were a number of politically exposed individuals being appointed to critical positions. But I think that, my hope is that there is an understanding, certainly, that politics can be hostile, it can be difficult, and coalition politics in particular. And so I've been in this game before in Nelson Mandela Bay. I've worked in a coalition environment, and I've tried to conduct myself discreetly and in good faith. Sadly, that has not the favor doesn't appear to have been returned, and that is unfortunate. I just want to make the point again. part of the responsibility that I felt that I had in this role was to provide oversight over some of the functions of the executive. And, you know, I think that that's important. I think that's something that the GNU actually brings to the table in this new era of governance in South Africa, is a new, fresh pair of eyes on a number of processes, decisions that need to be taken. And I think that's healthy. And you know, if those are the reasons that I've been terminated, well, then so be it, and I'll wear it as a badge of honor, quite frankly.
What was your relationship like with the minister and your co-deputy minister?
Well, I mean, you know, I suppose the political answer would be collegial, but you know, I think that I think it's been awkward. I don't think any of these relationships are supposed to be entirely normal and purely kumbaya, if I can put it that way. But, you know, I think that I've tried to act in the best of my ability and good faith, and I've been very impressed with some of the diligence and the approach of the minister and the deputy minister to a number of things. I see tremendous potential for this GNU in its current format to continue and to work and to strengthen. And I think that the president's decision has disrupted what is a learning curve for all of us in the GNU, from both the ANC, the DA, and other parties, is learning to trust each other to the best of our abilities, which is really tough. I acknowledge that. And learning to work together, and where we can't work together, to agree to disagree. And, you know, I think that this decision is premature and is an unnecessary provocation, ultimately.
So if you believe this was an unnecessary provocation, I mean, even your party believes that this is inconsistent. It's inconsistent, it's insubordination when you have people who have messed up, whom the president hasn't taken action against. The DA leader has now given the president an ultimatum to fire the compromised ministers in his cabinet within 48 hours, including Thembisi Melani, the Minister Nkabani, and Deputy Minister Mahlobo, or face consequences. What happens after 48 hours? Based on the decision of the federal executive, what are the possible consequences here if the president doesn't fire these people in 48 hours?
Well, I mean, that is going to be a decision that the federal executive will have to convene to take. And I think that what has been made very clear by the leader of the DA is that a line has been crossed, which is is going to be very difficult to turn back from. I just don't see a situation in which the DA can continue to operate in the GNU in the way that we have. I think that there are a number of options at our disposal. Leaving the GNU is one of them. And, you know, I think that the president believes that he, you know, for whatever reason, that he thinks that the DA is perhaps not going to take that decision, or perhaps the president simply doesn't want the GNU to work and has decided to provoke a reaction on something like this. I can't possibly imagine what's going on in the president's head. I have had some calls from some colleagues in the ANC who have been perplexed. They've been supportive. I've tried at all times to be as respectful as politics permits with colleagues. And, you know, I think that there's a bit of confusion inside the ANC around this as well.
Wait, did I hear you right that you got calls from some of the ANC colleagues who have been supportive?
Yeah, I mean, they've reached out and I've had a conversation or two, and I think that you know, it was. I mean, I just assume that these decisions are taken as a collective, as some like to say. But I think that, you know, at the end of the day, there have been some good relationships built and there's been some good work done. And I think there's an acknowledgement from all parties involved, Clement. I think that this GNU has presented an opportunity for politicians to mature and to rise up and to resolve issues in a different way. And I think the president has not taken that route. He's taken a different route entirely. I think it's premature. And it's deeply unfortunate. And you know, if there was another way to sanction me, if he'd raised this a month ago, 3 months ago, there's been 4 months. It's I don't know why the timing is now, and potentially putting the budget in jeopardy, which luckily didn't happen today.
All right, Henry Whitfield, thank you so much. for speaking to us. Really appreciate your time on Face the Nation tonight. We've been asking you what you make of this decision that the president has taken. Some tweets have come through, so let's look at some of them. Mohale says it's clear the ANC is feeling the heat from the presence of the DA ministers and deputy ministers in the National Executive. They're busy uncovering the rot implicating senior ANC politicians in acts of corruption. South Africans cannot be fooled. The DA must walk. Bono says this is ridiculous. President Ramaphosa should be firing Minister Thembisi Melani, whom he decided to move to another department. The reason behind Whitfield's dismissal is absolutely crazy. Buhle says President Ramaphosa firing Andrew Whitfield shows just how shaky this unity is. Was it even about his performance or just political territory? In SA, it is clear that public service takes a backseat while power in positions take center stage. We deserve better. Sunny Boy says it's unfair that he did that. At least the president could have done, what he could have done is to consult the DA just like he does when there are issues with ministers from the alliance partners. It would be courtesy to have done so. I think the ANC has to learn that they are no longer in power alone. Thank you so much for your tweets. After the break, we'll start that conversation with the Road Accident Fund CEO, Collins Letsoalo. Welcome back. The suspended Road Accident Fund CEO, Collins Letsoalo, has approached the Pretoria High Court in an attempt to overturn his suspension and resume his duties. Letsoalo's court bid comes amid controversy, with the Road Accident Fund board having placed him on special leave amid corruption allegations, and then the board doubled down on that decision and suspended him on allegations of insubordination after he allegedly failed to appear before the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. The Deputy Minister of Transport, Mkhuleko Hlengwa, has expressed deep concern about the instability at the fund. Collins Letsoalo joins us now in studio. Mr. Letsoalo, thank you so much for making time for us. Good evening.
Good evening, Clement, and good evening to the viewers.
So let's maybe start with why you've decided to approach the court to set aside the board's decision to suspend you. What exactly are you challenging about the suspension?
The legality of it and the rationality of it. Firstly, let's clarify something, Clement. I've never been put aside for any corruption allegations. Because if you ask what are those corruption allegations, there's nothing. Okay. So I was told that there was a letter coming from the minister talking about interference or hindrance of the SIU investigation. Yeah. That started in 2021. And it is now towards its final stages. I'm the one that actually asked when I arrived at the RAF that the SIU must come. Yeah. Now, it's very strange that people are saying things, but it's about, they were raising some, they say it's preliminary findings of something I've never seen that was presented in front of SCOPA, and they said we were involved in some, with Moana Properties, but Moana Properties, that lease belongs to a government employee pension fund. Okay, let's take a few steps back and start with the special leave. So you are placed on special leave by the board, and then a few days later, they rescind that decision to place you on special leave, and they say, we are suspending you. What was the reason initially that they gave for placing you on special leave? It was the SIU investigation, because they said the SIU investigation, which had been there since 2021. And I had actually attended a hearing of the SIU on the 21st of May, so it was quite shocking. But I mean, I had flown to Cape Town. As I am airborne at about 10 to 11 at night. They know I'm airborne. They sent this letter. They never even tell me. In the morning, I realized I've got a letter that says I am on special leave until further notice, and we effective immediately. Meaning I could not go to SCOPA. I could not go to SCOPA because I was on special leave placed by the board, although unlawful. I then write to them on the 30th, it was on the 27th. Then I watched SCOPA I was amazed. I was just stupefied by what I found there, because what they were saying is that I was on special leave because of the SIU investigation. Suddenly, when they go in there, they just lie and say it's because I refused to come to Scope. But I was in a hotel in Cape Town. So they then met sometime during that weekend of the 30th, 31st. I wrote them a letter on the 30th. They don't present it in front of the board as the deputy chair and the chair. And on Saturday of the 31st, I write them another letter because they had lied on the 30th and said that I went AWOL on the 24th and 25th. And 24th and 25th was a weekend. So, I mean, how do I go AWOL? Should I ask for leave to live in South Africa? It's a very strange thing. But then they then were saying a lot of things to Scopa. But when they were approaching me in the first instance about this leave that they were saying that I rejected was on the basis that it is on compassionate grounds. And I said, well, it's going to create some funny thing that I'm running away from Scopa. I'm not going to agree with that. I disagree with the fact that Scopa is going to ask us questions about the SIU, but for me, I'm still going to go. So we sit as the EXCO, we decide to go. So they sent this thing. Then suddenly, in a turn of events, they are called to PCOT, to Portfolio Committee on Transport on the 3rd of June. I sit there. Oh, there they are. They say I'm now suspended. Now, remember, for the first time I see it on the screen.
Based on the same grounds?
No. Now it's because I did not attend a SCOPA meeting of the 28th. How would have I attended it if you are saying to me that I'm on special leave? You are placed
on special leave.
So it's a strange phenomenon.
Okay, so what happens then when you are saying you're challenging the unlawfulness? What exactly are you challenging? What does the policy of the Road Accident Fund says in as far as precautionary suspension is concerned?
Well, there are processes. They do not follow those processes.
What is that process?
The process says that there must be a process where, firstly, in my contract of employment, I think it's clause 21, it says that if there is a prima facie case of something that is can lead to a dismissal, then they can actually place me on suspension. But before they do that, they must follow a certain process in terms of the disciplinary code of the RAF.
Okay.
If you look at the disciplinary code, if insubordination does not lead to a dismissal, it leads to a final written warning at the first instance, and in the second instance, then a dismissal. So now they are trying to move away from that, and they have placed me on special leave. Now they say for 90 days. Now, here's an interesting phenomenon. They've not even started with this so-called inquiry. What is this inquiry about? Because, I mean, how do you place someone on special leave for insubordination? It has already happened. I mean, if I have insubordinated, it has already happened, and therefore there's no need to place me on special leave because all the information is there. It's sitting with the probably the chair of the board, including the board itself.
Okay.
But what we will find is that this is driven by the chair and the deputy chair.
Okay. In the court papers, from my understanding, the board chair says that a day before you were suspended, they received a letter from the SIU head, Andy Mutibi, flagging concerns that the fund spent, if I'm not mistaken, about 4.7 billion rand on default judgments after the termination of a panel of attorneys. Is that correct? Are you aware of what was communicated to them by the SIU? Because it looks like they're still saying you're suspended based on this investigation and what could be the preliminary findings of the SIU.
No, that's not true. My letter of suspension says is because I refused to go to the SIU. That's what it says. So what nonsense is that now suddenly some panel attorney. Let me explain this thing of the panel of attorneys. It went all the way. The rationality test was tested. It went all the way to the Constitutional Court and we won that battle. It was Mabunda versus the RAF. But what is interesting is this. Those were decisions of the board. They were not my decisions. How do I take such a decision? It goes, we recommend to the board takes that decision. Now, it's very interesting that someone can come and say that in context where they have agreed with everything. If you see our performance in terms of reducing legal costs, it was part of that thing to get rid of the panel. And we agreed. And at no point did they say that they are now developing cold feet about it. The reality is this, Clement. They are getting pressure from the deputy minister, right? The deputy minister has written them a letter and say, I want you to advertise this position. This is after they've taken a decision on the 27th of February to recommend for reappointment. So that is a board resolution that sits.
Okay, let's look at maybe the dropping of the panel of attorneys.
Yes.
You're saying this was the decision that the board agreed with.
Yes.
You signed off on it. What were the consequences of that decision? Because it looks like from what the SIU is coming from, based on what the board chairperson says that decision has cost the road accident fund a lot of money.
It's quite risible, okay? So it's actually quite stupid to say it. Okay, let me explain this thing, how it happened. So we have got the legal cost of RAF at 10.6 billion when we started. We are now sitting at 3 billion. We have reduced them by about 75% over.
Is that as a result of dropping the panel of attorneys?
Yes, because the panel of attorneys was costing us 3.8 billion a year.
Yeah.
Now, we have saved 30 billion, and the very same board is proud about it. Now, let me explain the issue of default judgment. You know it. It's a very simple thing.
Yeah, because just to explain to our listeners is that even though you've saved money through dropping the panel of attorneys, you are getting default judgments from the courts, and that is costing the road accident funds.
That's not true. Let me explain. So let's take it. Even if that was the case, I would have saved 30 billion and it would have cost them 4.7. So at the end of the day, 25 billion would have been made. Okay? It makes logical sense. Now let me explain this thing of the default judgment. So default judgment as a result of you not defending matters. Okay? Now, the first thing is, if you defend a matter, Clement, it does not fall off the court roll. It moves from what is called unopposed to opposed. So that does not change the fact that the matter is in court. So it's going to be in court in any event. So it's going to be even worse because now it's on an opposed basis. Now, the default judgment is where the respondent is not there. So the judge does not just go and rubber stamp this thing and say, Clement wants 4 million, I'm going to give 4 million. It says, after looking at what is sitting in front of me, I then say, indeed, Clement was involved in an accident and he deserves 4 million. That's a decision of a judge. It is not just to say, I see this, then he stamps. No, he doesn't. He applies his mind. And we will show, we have shown even to, we have taken this thing to PCOT, which is the Portfolio Committee on Transport, to show them that there are cases where the judge would say, you want 4 million, you are not even entitled to a cent, so I'm rejecting this. It has happened.
There's one of the judges, is Judge Swanepoel, who says, and I quote here, I still have 41 unopposed matters on the default roll in the week of the 5th of May. In 8 of these matters, the defense had been struck out, and in 13, the funds were under bar. In 20 cases, the fund had not even noted an appearance to defend. The Road Accident Fund did not deal with its matters properly, did not send lawyers to court to oppose applications, or if it did not provide them with any instructions. In this manner, huge sums of money, public money, it must be emphasized, are lost. That's according to Judge Swanepoel.
Let's take this thing of Swanepoel. So Swanepoel says, if this thing comes in front of me and Clement claims that he's got 4 million, let's just say there are 41, okay? Clement comes and other people. Clement says 4 million. The other one says 5. He says he does not apply his mind to that. That's a very strange phenomenon. But in any event, let me tell you what we do. After that, Swanepoel would make a default judgment. We check. Is Clement supposed to get 4 million? Yeah or nay? If we say no, we rescind that judgment. And I'll give you an example. This thing of the recent judgment in Cape Town of a foreigner that was paid money and it was a rescission. The RAF applied to rescind that judgment. Yeah. If we believe that you don't deserve that money, we rescind it. And if we rescind it, we go for a rescission. And if we don't agree with that, we take it for appeal. So we have got a chance again on a default judgment. We don't just say because it's a default judgment, I'm paying it. If it does not make sense, and the judge is saying, we challenge it through a rescission.
So to be clear, do you still stand by the decision to drop the panel of attorneys?
Absolutely. And I told them that it's an illusion to think that thing can ever come back. How do you sit with a situation where you pay 3.8 billion? To do what? And this story that, no, it starts now, it's not true. Let me tell you, there is an Advocate magazine article of April 2021 that says the tectonic plates have shifted and crashed the subset of the bar. At the time, they were decrying the reduction in the number of claims of matters that were going on the roll. So I'm saying we can be, and there is a Moseneke committee, by the way. The Moseneke committee, when they are asked about the issue around who's clogging the courts, they're not talking about us. They are saying there is a death of the number of judges. They last discussed the issue of judges around 2008. And they elect judges, and then they are going to come and blame us. This issue we have discussed. We have even discussed with the Deputy Minister of Justice on those matters. So it's a very clear thing. This story of it cost the RAF 4 billion, it's a lie. And it's quite stupid at that, actually.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that the board mismanaged this matter in as far as placing you on special leave and then admitting that it was actually illegal, because they did so, I think, in Parliament, admitted that it was illegal. That's why they received legal opinion that said that's not going to fly, and then they decided to go for suspension. But what I'm trying to understand here, and I'm sure the viewers are asking themselves, if really you've saved 30 billion rand,
50 billion.
50 billion
30
rand. So,
of legal fees.
So on legal fees, based on dropping the panel of attorneys, if you've saved so much money, even though the SIU may come and say through default judgment that's costing 4.7 billion rand, there's still a 25 billion rand or so, right? If that's the case, then why is the board coming after you?
They're scared. As I said in the PCOT, they're scared. The Deputy Minister told them they're going to be fired. If they dare bring a memo saying that we are reappointing this guy, they're going to be fired.
But why would the Deputy Minister want you out so bad?
Well, he was at the chairperson of SCOPA is continuing along the very same line, Clement. I've indicated a couple of things. I'll show you that if you look at the issue of the AG, and because they do check all these things, whether it's performance, whether it's all those things, we agree on all those matters. There's only one matter that we don't agree with the AG on, is also on the issue of the accounting policy, which we are challenging in court. So the reality is this. There is a big lobby group that says we don't want this guy back, because when we have this guy back, I don't know if you have seen what LPC said today. People can go, because of the economy and the way it is, people are now being corrupt because there are pressures in society. They accept that. They go, LPC goes and tells SCOPA that, and SCOPA agrees with that. They look at it and they say, no, there are people, they don't have jobs, they don't have that. So what are you saying? People must be corrupt simply because they can't make a living.
By lobby group, you mean in the legal fraternity?
Yes, there is a lobby group in the legal fraternity. There is a lobby group in the medical schemes. I've sent you a letter that they sent to the minister by Discover, writing to a minister 7 days after she got appointed.
One of the things they are concerned about based on that letter is the issue of claiming for medical expenses. Can you explain what the RAF policy is in as far as if Clement is involved in an accident and I've got a medical aid that pays for the medical expenses, according to the RAF Act, can I still come to RAF and claim for those medical expenses from you guys?
Who?
As RAF. So as Clement, who's been involved in an accident, even though I've got a medical aid that's paid for my medical expenses, can I still claim that from the road accident?
No, but you must claim for your loss. What have you lost? Because the medical aid is paid.
But then it looks like the medical aid then challenges that.
No, but the medical aid says to Clement, Discovery wants to say, Clement, if you are a member, go and claim and take the money and give to us. And give it's like someone saying to you, go and claim from SASA, and once you've got that money from SASA, give it to me. And you have got a retirement annuity that you have joined. It's nonsensical. And I'm saying, we won that case, by the way, Clement. They write in July. In December, we win that case against Discovery. And all I said is, I want all the money that you have been taking from the RAF illegally. And I'm saying, in there you will see it. They are saying, this thing that Letsoalo does can't be left like that. And I said, by who? By who? They say it can't be tolerated. And my question when I respond to the minister, I say, by who? It can't be tolerated by who? Why do you go and complain when we are in court? We're in court. Why did they write that letter? Because if they were strong on their case, and they were saying that we are recalcitrant, we don't agree to court orders on all those things. We went to court, we won, right? The same thing. Now, even it links to this issue of hey, they don't have the head of legal, but we have been winning cases.
Okay. Did you win the case initially after Discovery took it to court? Because there was a directive that was sent out, right?
Yes.
That said, monies must not be paid.
Yes.
Did you win the case from then on?
In December, we won.
But when did the case start?
The case started in...
Was that the first judgment that came out of this matter?
Remember, they had the first judgment.
So
the first judgment, they were challenging the two.
The directive.
The directive. Because the directive was quite broad.
They won that.
They won that.
Yes.
Right? But before they could even go to SCA and everywhere, we had changed, we had another what we call directive. Yes, and that directive is still standing.
Okay.
Yes.
So what's your plan then? I mean, you want them now to reinstate you. The board seems like they don't want you back.
No, but it's not the board that does not want me back.
But it's the board chair.
It's the board chair, but that's not the chair. That's not the board. That's why she takes fraudulent resolutions.
But why are the other board members not coming out?
They've been written, no? But I think if you look at the letter of the 9th... No, it's not one person.
How many are there?
That is the audit committee of 5 people. And the board has got 10 people. An audit committee of 5 people saying all these things that have been done, the appointment of these attorneys was not done properly. There was no board resolution. But the court yesterday said to us, notwithstanding all that, I even opened a case of perjury against the chair and the board secretary. The court says, no, we include these things. We are going to take it that regardless of whether these things were done fraudulently or not. That was quite shocking. But I know the battle I'm having is with the legal fraternity, includes these judges. So I was not surprised when I saw that. I know that there is a judgment that they're saying coming on Monday. I'm not quite confident about it because the judge was sitting there arguing the case for the people that were not supposed to even be there. The road accident fund was not even there. They had not appointed their own lawyer. It was only the board there.
But if these judges were against you, why would you then win some of the cases?
That's why I'm giving you a chance. North Gauteng High Court, we know we lose all the cases there. Most of the cases we win at SCA. That's the truth, right? So you must know that when we go to North Gauteng High Court, we know what the outcomes are. 90% of the time, no matter how strong our case is, we're not going to win it.
So you want the court to halt the adverts for the CEO post. I know the board chair said, but we haven't really done any advertisements yet. Why are you against that? Do you think that you already had a promise that your contract was going to be renewed for another 5 years?
Why did I go for a 360? If you look at what the minister says on the reappointments, she gives 3 things. The motivation had been finalized, the 360 was done. What does that mean?
But the board is the one that must still make the resolution.
No, the resolution is done. All I'm saying is that the 360 is done.
The board chair said that's not the case.
But she's lying.
But what is a 360? Is a 360 a board that sat and said we are agreeing that?
The 360 is you, Clement, saying as a stakeholder, I look at this thing and I think that Letsoalo is doing well. For some reason, it went to lawyers. For some reason, it went to the people in the medical fraternity and everyone to assess me. So I've been assessed by everyone.
What is the process that happens before the 360?
There is a process of motivation that they do, and it's done as I say. They take it, they are motivating. What they are looking at is my performance. Yes. As I've shown you, we're performance 85% on average over the last 5 years. Yeah. That is what, audited by the AG. So they've done that, they've looked at that, they are happy. Now they then say, go and do a 360 of other people. So 360 means other people. The people that report to me, I think Labour was involved, a lot of other people were involved. It means it would seem that people did not like the outcome of the 360. I went and did my 360, and I think I did well.
But based on what I've looked at in as far as the processes are, the board must still sit and have a resolution and then
on the
for concurrence go to the minister.
On the 360, and I'm saying the 360 is there. There's nothing they can do about the 360. The results are there. Remember, they chose the process. Once someone makes you write a test, the outcome of it they must accept. They can't go and say, no, let's look at this and all that. The test is finalized, the 360 is done. The other aspect of the assessment, which is on the performance, is done. It has been approved. It went to REMCO, it's done.
So it's supposed to go to the board now?
It is now supposed to, no, it has gone to the board, it's done. The only
what did
thing
the board say about it?
No, they're happy with it.
They said they're happy?
Yes,
what did they say to the minister?
No, but that's why I'm saying, on the 27th, when they're supposed to finalize the 360, that's when they start the stories about special leave.
So they haven't gone to the minister then?
Yes, they have not gone to the minister.
So then you don't have a legally binding
I have it.
Document that says this is the man that we want for this position for another 5 years?
Remember, there are resolutions. In terms of Rule 53 in court, I can discover those documents. They are about me. So there are resolutions. I know that there are those resolutions.
Resolution that says, as the board, we are reappointing.
We are not advertising. First they say, we are not advertising. We are reappointing.
Okay, but do you agree that if you cannot find that resolution of the board, then
It's
you've
there.
lost it.
What do you mean I can't find it? It's there.
Well, I'm saying that because the
I'm
board
saying no, but I mean there are letters that are going in the board there, where some of the board members are saying, but we have agreed to reappoint.
So the resolution is there of the board.
The resolution is there.
You'll be able to prove that they did say
absolutely.
that they want you.
In fact, there is a WhatsApp message that comes from the chair going to other board members saying, if we do not go and attend SCOPA, remember there is a process of CEO. Yeah. We are now alienating this minister to actually act according to what we have agreed, because there is that resolution. So you can't come and say there's no that. Why did I go for the 360 there? Because there was no need. Once you go through that process, so they have decided to move along the side of a reappointment. Then that's why the 360 comes. If they did not need that, they would have just advertised the position. There was no need for a 360. 360 to do what? Because I'm the only one that can write a 360. I'm the only one that can be reappointed. That's why I'm saying they cannot go out on advert, because that affects my rights in terms of the process that they've already undertaken.
What's your next plan? I mean, if they're going to continue with this fight through, if they do make an advertisement for your post and they find another CEO, what's your next plan?
What is the other CEO going to do? Does it mean I can't apply? I'm going to apply.
You're going to apply?
I know this thing very well, Clement. There is no one in South Africa and globally, by the way, that can do this thing better than me. I believe that. So people can say I'm arrogant and all that. The fact remains, they know for a fact. You know what they are relying on? They are relying on the fact that they are going to say, well, there is a need for 3 names. But the law does not say that. Because I know what they're trying to do. They are going to say, no, let's get 3 names. You recommend 3. There's no such a thing in the RAF Act. You recommend a name because you are recommending a CEO. You are not recommending
But if
CEOs.
they've made that recommendation, as you suggest that they've made the resolution, then there wouldn't be a need for you to even apply.
But you are saying to me, what if they go ahead? I'm saying I'm going to apply.
Well, are you not going to challenge that decision? And
No,
say
I will.
that
That does not change the process, because there are 2 separate processes. Remember, there's a process of reappointment, which is totally different from where they go out and advertise. There will be 2 processes. I'm still going to challenge that process, by the way. I will challenge that process. There's no problem in challenging that process. I will challenge that process. But I am quite confident, Clement. I know what I'm doing. I'll tell you one thing. Show me an entity in the state that has saved 50 billion. Show me one. Show me the one that has turned around like the RAF. And that's why I'm also calling on the executives of the RAF. I'm saying continue doing the work you are doing. I heard yesterday someone saying, no, even your performance has been done in line with the rules. That's why. On an objective test of the AGSA, they have found that the performance is as we are saying it is. So there's no one who can do that. If they want to challenge it, they must go and challenge it with the AG. But the reality is that is the case. The lower staff at RAF, the morale must not go down. I'm hearing that the morale is down. Some of them are phoning me crying. I'm saying, keep working. You have worked hard for the last 5 years. You deserve every cent of the bonuses we have given you.
Collins Letsoalo, thank you so much for speaking to us. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, we've reached out to the Road Accident Fund for a response. They declined the interview. The RAF head of corporate communications, Bakentosh Polela, said, and I quote, "This matter is before the court with judgment expected on Monday." The RAF is not giving any commentary. We also reached out to the Office of the Deputy Minister of Transport, who was also unavailable this evening. We've also reached out to the Gauteng Judge President. Thank you for watching the Thursday edition of Face the Nation. We'll be back with you on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Have a good evening. Cheers.